hello there, and welcome to the second half of Unlock the Door Radio here on UCY TV Productions. Now, for the second half, what I would like to do is explore one of the people I think is very noteworthy in American history, although a lot of people aren't really aware of too much about him. And if they are aware of aspects of his life, they're only aware of very general aspects, and often those have been clouded in, well, I would say mystery, but also in a certain amount of negativity that might come because of his religious beliefs. And what I'd like to do tonight is deal with the individual known as Brigham Young, sometimes nicknamed the American Moses. And what I'd like to do is deal with some of his insights on individuality, his insights on, women's rights. You might find he was more enlightened than most people would think. His leadership and his view of the Constitution of the United States. So what I thought I would do is go through a few of his statements, things that he had said, commentary, and analyze them in the context of today's society. Because, these may have been comments made, about 150 years ago or so. But in the course of human history, that's not that long ago. It really isn't. And the way that we're going today, one could easily see that this is not something that's detached from modern society, because ultimately that chain that connects history together does not have that many links between today and the era of like the mid 1800s and later part of the 1800s. So let's take a look at the person that could be said, at least in a historical context, of being responsible for the foundation of many of the cities and even, much of the populations of the states of the American Southwest. So, what I'd like to do is start off by basically reading a comment that Brigham Young made about society in general. And if you made this comment today, people might be thinking that you're part of the Occupy Wall Street or one of those kinds of organizations. But ultimately, the thing is that, let's just go ahead and go for it. So, here's a quote from Brigham Young, and just see what you think about this. When the books are opened, out of which the human family are to be judged, how disappointed the professedly sanctified, long-faced hypocrites and smooth-toned Pharisees will be when the publicans and harlots enter into the kingdom of heaven before them. People that appear to be full of evil, but the Lord says they never designed to do wrong. The devil had power over them, and they suffered in their mortal state 1,000 times more than you poor, miserable, canting, cheating, sniveling, hypocritical Pharisees. You who were dressed in purple and fine linen, and bound burdens upon your weaker brethren, that you would not so much as help to lift with your little fingers. Did you ever go without food, suffer with toothache, sore eyes, rheumatism, or the chills and fever? You have fared sumptuously, I love those words, all your days, and you condemned to an everlasting hell those poor harlots and publicans, who never designed an evil. Are you not guilty of committing an evil with that poor harlot? Yes, you will be damned while she will be saved. Let's fast forward this. I mean, that's kind of controversial, saying back in the Victorian era where everyone was supposed to be all prim and proper. But let's fast forward this a bit and put it in today's context. What he was condemning was business people, rich people, who did not mind exploiting the labor of the lower classes, who cared nothing, absolutely nothing, for their plight. And the thing is that I think we could easily see that around us today. I mean, I can hardly blame at least the idealistic Democrats, and I think most Democrats are idealistic. Okay, I don't think they're the kind that we see that make it into the higher political realms of this society any more than most of the Republicans that make it into the higher realms of today's society. I don't think you can really say that the people that run the country, either party, represent the people who identify with those parties. Because you know what? I talk to Democrats all the time, and their hearts are in the right place. I talk to Republicans all the time, and their hearts are in the right place. But these are the people that, they're just the regular people that go to work and, try to send their kids to school and, make a better life for themselves. But take a look at where today's society is. I mean, look at what we've got. We've got corporations that would just as soon move their corporations over to some third world country where they can have the government control the population and make sure that they work for pennies per hour, making the clothes, making the furniture, making all those kinds of things that we look upon, as being, our necessities and things we have to buy in order just to survive. But then they tell us we need to buy more and more and more and more so we can, show up each other in some sort of orgy of materialism. Now, these corporate leaders, they're the ones who the media look up upon. Have you ever thought one thing, though? Have you ever thought that the mainstream media, take a look at the salaries of the people you will see on the national mainstream media. Look it up. It's on Google. Just Google any names of commentators. Okay? See how much money they make. They're not part of the 99%. Okay? Those guys make a lot of money. They're not the person who's sitting there going, can I afford to get a new jacket for my daughter this spring? Okay? That is not the social class they come from. And take a look at who gets shown as being wonderful. Corporate leaders and so forth. People, oh my gosh, Leonardo DiCaprio, he gives a speech for the United Nations about how much we have to take control of the environment, and the media acts like it was some sort of whoa, this is so wonderful, he's so enlightened, we love him so much. I'm not making any comments about Leonardo DiCaprio, except for the fact he does own a lot. Look it up. There was an article in the UK Telegraph. The UK Mail. The guy's carbon footprint is quite a bit higher than most people. But the media is making it sound like, oh, this is so enlightened and so forth. But, it's not people like that I'm mostly, looking at. It's these, people that make hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and then they are the icons of today's society. If you watch the nightly news, you'd think all Americans are rich. I can't blame the people coming up here on trains from Latin America if they're watching American TV shows that present everyone as being filthy rich. Okay? They don't show the poor slobs out there that, they feel guilty if they buy lunch instead of maybe taking a sandwich to lunch. Okay? The media does not represent the 99%. All right? But the media will show you a picture of what you're supposed to feel like you should have. No wonder there's so much depression in the world today. So, anyway, here I'm knocking the corporate layer. But let's put it into another context. I saw a documentary dealing with the mainstreaming of porn. How much the big giant corporations make off of it. I don't know, in telecommunications, hospitality corporations, these kinds of things, making a whole bunch of money off of it. And the thing is, these, maybe what he would call the harlots, of his era. Maybe if he was alive today, he would say it's the people that, for one reason or another, go into an industry that, they're having to go out and have relations with someone on camera so as to entertain the masses that tune in. And the thing is, it's not just it's not a small thing. It's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Okay, if you just throw it all together, and the big corporations that have nothing to do with such thing will still profit from it, because then they offer the services directly or indirectly to their customers. I mean, look at our society today. There is you could call it a corporatocracy in the United States. What's good for the corporations is good for the society. And then what do we hear from the mega churches? These big, they look like everyone has one in their city. They look like a big ski lodge that's happens to have some crosses in it or something. And then you hear everything. Well, you don't hear much about politics, but you certainly, in some of these churches, you get the message that, well, if you're just righteous enough, you should be rich too. I mean, come on, what? I don't get it, but maybe they have a secret out there that I'm missing because I'm not rich. So who knows? But take a look at who we honor in today's society. I think what Brigham Young says here is pretty profound when he's basically saying that the people that we look upon and might even look our nose down upon, like, oh, I can't believe such people just, how can they live that way? But at the same time, we look to people who basically run the United States, get us into wars, form all kinds of, I'm not going to say conspiracies, but basically, when people get together and everything from fixing prices to dictating what the norms of the society and even the laws should be, they get the honors, they get the praise. These are the champions of today's society. I really don't see that these are the people we should look up to, and I'm sure that if Brigham Young were around, he wouldn't be saying they were either. Now, a little bit away from maybe his progressivism or whatever you want to call it. I just normally just say that just makes good common sense. Now, getting into government. Oh, let's see what our historical leader would say here. The thing he says here is the seeds of sin which are in them are sufficient to accomplish their destruction. Every government in the world has the seeds of its own destruction in itself. I hope and trust and pray that the government of our country may remain, because it is so good. But if they cut off this and cast out that and institute another thing, they may destroy all the good it contains. This I hope that they will not do this. They cannot do it. I expect to see the day when the elders of Israel will protect and sustain civil and religious liberty and every constitutional right bequeathed to us by our fathers, and spread those rights abroad in connection with the gospel for salvation of all nations. Okay, essentially, and one other quote I gotta throw in here. Is the form of the government ruined? Has its form become evil? No, but the administrators of the government are evil. As we have said many times, it is the best form of human government man ever lived under, but it has as corrupt a set of administrator as God ever permitted to disgrace his footstool. Now, the thing is, I see this sometimes amongst people who maybe you would call left-wing, and they would look at all the sins in a secular sense, but they'd still call them sins, which is kind of ironic. You'll find the left is very religious, it's just they often will deny God. The thing is, they'll look at today's society, and they will say, oh my gosh, this is the failure of our system. No, it's not the failure of our system. The Constitution of the United States and the system it set up is the best way of keeping under control the ambitions, the desires of psychopathic people. I mean, what's that saying? There's a saying that says power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Our system of government was set up because it understood, the founding fathers understood human nature. And human nature is such that if you give someone a little power, they'll try to take more. And if they can get more, they'll get more, and they'll get more, and they'll get more. Look at what happened with what's happening with things like the Patriot Act and the NSA and all these kinds of things. There's a lot of congressmen and senators who have said, since most of them are retired, that they voted for these provisions after 9/11, and they felt that, okay, but we have enough common sense that we're not going to let it lead to abuse. The problem is, just like he said with the seeds of destruction, you plant those you give government officials a little bit of power, and suddenly they take off. And then if they can go turn around and say, well, you're not being very much of a patriot if you don't support that Patriot Act, and if you don't follow what the government is saying and so forth, you're not being very good patriot. Well, what you're winding up with is a system in which it's going to get out of control. And when it does get out of control, you're going to have, look at the NSA today. Okay? Every one of your phone calls, your computer, whatever websites you visit, I don't know what you're visiting out there, but I'm sure some of you visit some pretty interesting websites. Well, I don't know, but guess who does? That's right, Uncle Sam. And he's got a way. I mean, he doesn't have to sit there like Santa Claus and make a list out. It's all saved on the computer. They have files they're building. This is the ultimate of ironies, the NSA Center in Utah. I'm not sure Brigham Young would like that very much, but the thing is that this is just allowed, and people just sit back and like, oh, I guess we have to do it. We can't question. I'll say one thing. I've read a lot about Brigham Young, and he actually did say that you should question. He said people should question him, never just accept something. We need to instill this value back in our society where, it's kind of like that old Missourian thing about the show me state thing. We've got to get that kind of, not really cynicism and just give up and tune out and like, well, the government's going to you-know-where and I'm just going to sit back and watch it go. No, we need to take part. We need to try to do what we can, because ultimately, especially if you come from a Christian standpoint, you're going to be held accountable for not just the things you do, but the things you don't do. Okay? You may not hear so much about that from a minister who drives around a big BMW and has 3 vacation houses, but it is true that you will be judged according to what you don't do. So what are you going to do? You let the country go to you-know-where and then, figure that, well, I'll just, God understands that I just have to avoid the, not take part in it or something like that. Well, you're taking part because you're just kind of acquiescing to it. Now, one other thing I'd throw in here. One more quote from Mr. Young. By the way, I hope people are getting a little bit of like, hey, I'll study up on it. I'm not saying you have to go to like a Mormon church or something like that and study Brigham Young. Just get some, unbiased history books. Okay, that's kind of hard to find. Poor Brigham Young. I mean, he's got either people that love him or people that hate him. Try to find some history stuff. It's very interesting. But anyway, another quote he gave back in, I don't see a date here, but anyway, as I have often told my sisters in the female relief societies, we have sisters here who, if they had the privilege of studying, would make just as good a mathematicians or accountants as any man. And we think they ought to have the privilege to study these branches of knowledge, that they may develop the powers with which they are endowed. We believe that women are useful not only to sweep houses, wash dishes, make beds, and raise babies, but that they should stand behind the counter, study law or physics, medicine, or become good bookkeepers and be able to do business in any accounting house, and this to enlarge their sphere of usefulness for the benefit of society at large. In following these things, they but answer the design of their creation. The reason I threw that out is because some people will automatically dismiss Brigham Young because he did have, I think, something like 27 wives. Okay? Maybe half of those were the kind of wives that you might see on, like, a TV show like Sister Wives. I mean, they weren't like widows who married into his family and so forth to support their kids and that sort of thing. But they did get married to him and have kids. And the thing is that what I would throw in, though, is his attitude towards women. You could be a man that has one wife and have a very low opinion of that wife. You could, I mean, I think about the vast majority of men who really are kind of shouldn't even be married, are married to one woman. Okay? Brigham Young, it seems, had, and if you look, the way he treated women, it seems that he had a very enlightened view towards women. He felt they were his intellectual and spiritual equals. Actually, with spirituality, he thought they were his superiors. But the thing is that often people will just say that there's only one way. You got to be either a career woman or you have a family. Now, our society looks down on women who choose to have families. Now, the thing is, I've known a lot of women who have chosen to work from home, and that increases their ability to be able to be with their kids, but also make a living at the same time. And in today's society, it's kind of hard not to have at least a little bit more income coming in. I mean, that should be understandable. But maybe, and this is something that Brigham Young really emphasized, not a good idea to then sacrifice having a family on top of that. I see so many people caught up in like this idea that they should just, well, I don't have the kind of money my parents had, so maybe kids shouldn't be an option. Okay, you know what that to lead to? The people that might actually be best suited to have families, the people that maybe it would be better for society if they were having 3 and 4 kids, for instance, are the ones who are like, no, I better not. And the thing is, it's not that they are necessarily selfish, because I've run into a lot of after 40 women who are like, oh, I really actually do wish I had a family. So it's not a question of their personalities being selfish or something like that. It is the influence of our society that says you have to be either or. Okay? And if you do the or, and the or is to have a family, then you're not as good. And that, I think, is more abusive towards women than what Brigham Young was saying here is, yeah, you're useful having families and stuff like that, but you should also increase your talents in other areas as well. And I think that's a healthy balance. All right? Now, of course, his strategy might have been that maybe, if you have a polygamous situation, you've got built-in daycare, so if half the women are like, I want to have a career, and the other half are like, oh, I just love to be at home and take care of babies, then the career women go out, they make money, and it's communally shared, and their sister wives are taking care of their kids, so everyone gets a chance to have a bunch of kids, but maybe the career woman's out there using most of her time to bring money into the voluntary communal situation. Okay? These kinds of things where you have religious groups that, either at the family level or the community level, share all things in common, that is not communism. That is not necessarily capitalism, but it is freedom. It is the freedom of association to live life as you wish to live it. And if you don't coerce other people to live that way, then that is freedom. And it doesn't matter what kind of economic unit your little community undertakes. But ultimately, though, for those who want to remain monogamous, the thing is that we are seeing a really severe problem with people making family into just an option rather than something that careers should, in the old days, I mean, even just 40 years ago, men and women both, if they had a job, they worked so they could support their family. Now they work and family is sort of maybe. That's not healthy for society. That's not healthy for society at all. And at the individual level, individual families will actually die out. And I just got to throw this out at you. I once saw a chart that was just going by statistical averages, how many people are infertile, how many people don't marry, how many people wouldn't have kids, sterile, that sort of thing. If you have 2 kids and each of those 2 kids only decided to have 2 kids. That if they didn't have kids, that's one thing. If they did have kids, only 2. Statistically, that family disappears within 4 generations. If you go by the averages of some people don't marry, some people don't have kids statistically, some people are sterile, so forth. It comes out to 2 kids is your goal. Your family will completely genetically disappear in the future. I'm just throwing that out for consideration. I think Brigham Young had like 79 kids. I don't think the Brigham Young's genes are ever going to disappear. But then again, I know some families that have 6 kids, and you know, the same is true. Their family will not disappear because it, you know, even if maybe 1 or 2 of those kids couldn't have kids or they never married or something, the others made up for it and they grew. I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of mainstream religion is dying out right now is not necessarily because its message has gotten changed over the years. It's because they don't reproduce themselves. So if you go by the normal number that just kind of say bye-bye to their family's religion, and they don't also bring in enough converts to replace that, then that religion will die. I just remember one time I walked into like a Lutheran church, and there was a speaker. I wanted to go here, and there was like 400 people in this big hall, and it was all gray hair, all of it gray hair. And that was like 25 years ago, so most of those guys are probably dead. Okay, so that's just kind of gives you an indication of how demographics is not a fair thing. Well, anyway, I just thought I'd introduce you a little bit. I just thought these quotes, when I came across them, were just really inspirational and insightful for someone living back in the 1800s. You know, this is discounting all of the scientific and agricultural innovations that he supported and so forth. So anyway, I think I'll throw in a few historical figures here and there on the show just to kind of give insight, because we really need to see the people from our past and that are admirable and give us good positive examples. Because you know what, nowadays in politics and now, you know, in current history, I'm sorry to say, I don't see a lot of really great examples of individuals that we could say to our kids, hey, look at that man, that woman, they're someone you should really look up to and follow their examples. I just don't see that, and I'm sorry to say that's the case. So we need to look at history, and we need to incorporate a lot of the teachings and values that our society is quickly trying to sweep under the rug. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say tonight. So thank you very much for tuning in to Unlock the Door Radio here at UCY TV Productions, and hope to see you next week. Take care. Bye now.